Every great trade has a cycle, but only a disciplined trader knows where he truly stands inside it. For most traders, entries feel like the beginning, exits feel like the end, and everything in between feels like chaos. But Jesse Livermore didn't see trades that way. He saw them as cycles, phases, sequences with meaning and rhythm, like tides in the ocean or seasons in a year. And the painful truth is this: most traders lose not because they misread the market, but because they misread their position within the cycle. We enter too early. We add too emotionally. We exit too late or too soon. We confuse the test phase for the trend phase. We treat noise like confirmation. We treat confirmation like euphoria. The trade cycle was Livermore's antidote to confusion. It was how he built clarity out of chaos. It was how he determined when to strike, when to stand still, and when to get out while there was still time. And in this cinematic deep dive, I want to take you inside that philosophy, inside the mind of a speculator who mastered timing not through indicators, not through predictions, but through understanding the life cycle of a trend, because every trade you take, every single one, is born, grows, peaks, and dies. And if you don't know which stage your trade is in, you're not trading, you're drifting, you're improvising, you're reacting instead of anticipating. Livermore once said, "A man must know whether he is beginning a venture, continuing a venture, or ending a venture. Confusion in these stages is fatal." And that's the line that inspired this entire film. Today, we're exploring the Livermore trade cycle, the blueprint he used to determine when to enter, when to add, when to sit tight, when to pyramid, when to lighten up, and when to exit with precision, not emotionally. Not impulsively, not in reaction to fear or news or excitement, but with cold, calculated intent. This cycle is the reason he managed to catch massive market swings. It's why he held his biggest winners long after the public thought the move was done. And it's why he exited before the waves crashed. But before we get into the mechanics of the cycle, we need to talk about the greatest obstacle you face, an obstacle Livermore faced too. An enemy far more dangerous than volatility or price swings. It's the internal voice asking, is this the right moment? Should I add? Should I take profit? Is this move real? That uncertainty, that whispering voice of hesitation, is the reason so many traders never allow a cycle to unfold. We abort early. We rush in too soon. We add in the wrong phase. We exit before the trend even begins. Livermore knew that the real battle wasn't on the chart. It was inside the trader, in the conflict between the desire to act and the discipline to wait. So as we begin this journey, I want you to reflect on something. In your last trade, were you entering because the cycle demanded it? Or because your emotions did? Comment below with your honest answer, because your awareness of this single question will shape how deeply this film impacts you. Now, let's step into the next stage of Livermore's mind, the inner conflict that clouds the trade cycle for most traders long before the market ever does. The market rarely confuses you. Your emotions do. And nowhere is that confusion stronger than in the early phase of a trade, the moment where possibility meets uncertainty, where confidence wrestles with doubt, where the trade cycle becomes blurred by the human mind. Every trader, including Livermore himself, faced the same paradox. The best trades begin in uncertainty, but the worst decisions come from trying to escape that uncertainty too soon. Let me explain it the way I've lived it. You spot a setup. You feel the impulse and the urge to act. Your finger hovers over the buy button. For a moment, doubt creeps in. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm early? But that pressure, the need to be in the move, pushes you forward, so you enter. And then something strange happens. Instead of feeling calm, you feel exposed. Your mind starts speaking two languages at once. Hope. If this runs now, I want to add early and catch the whole wave. Fear. If I add too soon, I'll destroy the trade before it even starts. This is the paradox. This is the internal war. This is the moment Livermore studied more intensely than any price chart. He recognized that the beginning of a trade is when emotions scream the loudest and logic whispers the quietest. Because the market hasn't committed yet. The trend hasn't revealed its character. You're standing at the shoreline of a wave that might rise or might collapse under its own noise. Livermore once wrote, "The first hesitation of the tape is not a signal, it is a test." Think about that. Most traders see the first movement as a promise. Livermore saw it as a question, but the paradox doesn't stop there. It gets worse, because once the trade moves a little in your favor, a few points, a few percent, your emotions flip entirely. Before entering, you feared being wrong. Now, after entering, you fear being left behind. You fear missing the big move. You fear losing the perfect entry. You fear watching the position fly away without you. Even though you're already in it, I've lived this paradox more times than I can count. And every trader watching this has too. Livermore described this stage with almost surgical accuracy. A man's emotions are strongest at the beginning of a trade, when he knows the least about it. That's why this phase is the most dangerous. You're emotionally loud and informationally blind. You want action. You want confirmation. You want certainty. But the trade cycle demands the opposite. Patience, observation, alignment with the market's behavior, not your feelings. This is where most traders fall into the deadly trap. They act too soon in the cycle. They add before strength has proven itself. They size up during noise instead of structure. They attempt to catch the whole move instead of waiting for the part of the move that actually matters. The paradox deepens. The urge to act early kills the ability to act correctly. Livermore understood that no trend begins cleanly. No cycle starts with clarity. The earliest phase is always filled with traps, head fakes, volatility, and emotional misdirection. He trained himself to expect this, to recognize that the psychological storm at the start of a trade is a part of the cycle, not a failure of it. He once said something that still echoes in my mind. If a man must be nervous, let him be nervous small, meaning be uncomfortable with your test position. Not with your full position, not with your livelihood, not with your emotional state hanging on every tick. Your small initial entry absorbs your doubt. So your large, confirmed entry can be placed with clarity. That mindset and that emotional discipline is how Livermore defeated the paradox. So let me ask you this. When you enter a trade, do you feel calm? Or do you feel nervous? And what do you do with that feeling? Comment your answer below, because the truth you admit here will become the foundation for everything in the next section. The trap isn't in the chart. It's in the way you interpret the chart. This is the psychological ambush that destroys traders long before price ever turns against them. And Livermore knew this trap intimately, because he fell into it himself. Again and again early in his career, let me take you into it. When you start a new trade, that first small position, you enter with observation. Your mind is cautious, your senses sharp. You're watching for tells, behavior, rhythm. You're analyzing the early stages with a careful, almost scientific mindset. But then, the trade moves a little in your favor. Not enough to prove anything, but enough to spark emotion. A little green. A small profit. A confirmation that maybe you were right, and suddenly, your mind changes. Completely. The observation phase evaporates. The emotional phase begins. You shift from, let me see what the market is doing, to let me prove that I was right. And that is the psychological trap. That is the moment Livermore warned about most violently. Because the trap isn't greed. It isn't fear. It isn't even impatience, it's validation. The need to validate your entry. To validate your prediction. To validate yourself. Livermore wrote, "The desire to be right is the most expensive desire in speculation." That line stings because it's true. Most traders don't seek profit. They seek validation disguised as profit. This is the core problem. The mind convinces you that a small move in your favor means the trend has begun, when in reality, the market is simply testing your emotional stability. Livermore learned that the market does not reward excitement. It rewards endurance. Not mental endurance, emotional endurance. You know this feeling. Everyone who has traded knows it. The urge to add quickly. The urge to get full size before it runs. The urge to commit early because you want to catch the whole move. The urge to believe the trend has already chosen you. These urges make you fragile. They make your judgment cloudy. They make you blind to the fact that a minor move is not a trend, it's noise. Livermore used to track his emotional reactions just as carefully as price action. He noticed a pattern that repeated with cruel consistency. Every time he added too early, he did it out of hope. Every time he added during noise, he did it out of anxiety. Every time he ignored confirmation, he did it out of ego. He eventually realized something few traders ever acknowledge. The early profits are the bait. The real danger is believing they are the signal. And that belief, that false sense of confirmation, creates the deadliest illusion of all, the illusion of control. You begin to believe you understand the trend. Even though the trend hasn't even started revealing itself. You begin to believe you've entered at the perfect moment, even though the market hasn't shown any real structure. You begin to believe you are in before the crowd, even though no crowd exists yet. This psychological trap is why most traders lose big on trades that should have been harmless. Not because the trade was wrong, but because they enlarged the wrong phase of the cycle. Livermore became a master not because he knew when to enter, but because he knew when not to add. He avoided the trap by refusing to treat noise as confirmation, refusing to treat small wins as proof, refusing to scale up simply because he wanted the move to be real. He said, "The big mistake is acting on the wish, not on the fact." And that is the essence of this section, the core psychological trap. We act on the wish. We ignore the fact. So I want to ask you directly, honestly, when your trade goes green early, do you see strength? Or do you see an opportunity to prove yourself? Comment below, because knowing the answer to that question will determine whether you move forward into the next stage of the cycle or remain stuck in the trap forever. The market reveals itself slowly, but it reveals itself honestly, if you know what to look for. This was Jesse Livermore's gift. Not prediction, not intuition, not secret signals. His gift was clarity. The ability to separate noise from truth, emotion from evidence, imagination from behavior. You and I see the market through candles, charts, and indicators. Livermore saw it through character. He didn't ask, "Is the price moving?" He asked, "Is the price behaving?" That distinction, that razor-thin separation, became the cornerstone of his entire trade cycle. Let me break down how Livermore approached this psychologically. Fragile phase of a trade, the period where most traders get shaken out, distracted, or seduced into premature action. He divided the early stages of every trade into two entities. The market's intention, the trader's interpretation. The market's intention is slow, quiet, unemotional. It shows itself through persistence, through structure, through the refusal to break key levels. The trader's interpretation is loud, chaotic, emotional. It changes with every tick, every candle, every tiny shift in price. Livermore's brilliance was choosing which side to listen to. He wrote, "I never trust my feelings at the beginning of a move. Only the tape deserves trust." And the tape, the true behavior of price, only earned his trust when three things aligned. Livermore's 3 confirmations before acting further. 1. The stock must advance cleanly from the pivot, not erratically, not violently. Not through random spikes, but through steady, persistent progress. This told him that operators, big money, were behind the move. The stock must hold its reaction levels. Early trends don't need to be explosive. They need to be resilient. If a stock rises and gives some back but doesn't fully collapse, that's character. That's structure. That's loyalty to the trend. Volume and volatility must normalize. The first move is often chaotic, filled with volatility traps. But if the stock resumes upward momentum after volatility cools, that's the market revealing its true identity. These confirmations were how he separated fantasy from fact. It wasn't price that mattered, it was behavior. And this is where Livermore becomes brutally honest. If the market is with you, it acts like it. If it hesitates, it's giving you a warning. Most traders ignore warnings because early green blinds them. Livermore ignored early green because early movement meant nothing to him. 0. It wasn't a signal, it was a test. He waited for the moment the market shifted from testing him to proving itself. That moment, the transition, from noise to behavior, is the heartbeat of his entire trade cycle. He called it the point of confirmation. It is the moment where a stock stops acting like a possibility and starts acting like a candidate for a major trend. And this is the key insight most traders never understand. Livermore's trade cycle begins after confirmation, not before it. He didn't treat entries as the start. He treated confirmation as the start. Entries were tests. Confirmation was the beginning. Pyramiding was the commitment. Exits were the reward for respecting the cycle, everything. Before confirmation was simply observing the market's intention, everything. After confirmation was acting with precision. He summarized it with one of his most powerful lines. The mistake is thinking you know before the market shows. Every time he violated that principle, he lost. Every time he obeyed it, he won. Big. So I ask you, honestly, quietly, when you enter a trade, do you wait for confirmation? Or do you rush into commitment? A trade is not an event. It is a journey. And only the disciplined survive the entire distance. As we reach the final chapter of this deep dive into Livermore's trade cycle, I want to leave you with a truth he learned through millions won and millions lost. Success wasn't in predicting the move. It was in respecting the phases of the move. Every trader wants certainty. We want to know when to enter, when to add, when to exit. We want clarity, but we demand it too early. Livermore understood what most traders never accept. The market does not owe you clarity at the beginning of a trade. It gives clarity only to those who wait for it. Let me recap the cycle in the simplest, most powerful way. Livermore's trade cycle, the real version 1, the test entry small, unemotional, a probe, not a commitment. This phase is full of doubt and noise. Your job, observe, don't judge. The confirmation phase, this is the heartbeat of Livermore's entire method. The moment when price behaves consistently, reactions remain shallow, momentum reappears after cooling, the trend stops acting and starts proving. Your job, wait. Do nothing. Let the market reveal its intention. The commitment phase, adding pyramiding. Only after confirmation, never before it, Livermore added to his positions. Not emotionally, not excitedly, but methodically. This phase is where big money is made. Your job, build size only on strength, never on hope. The sitting tight phase, the hardest stage. The one most traders fail. Livermore said this was where he made his real money. Your job, do nothing. Let the trend mature. The exit phase, deterioration, not at tops. Not at bottoms, but when behavior changes, when the character of the trend shifts. When persistence turns to hesitation. Your job, leave not because price moved, but because behavior changed. This cycle wasn't just a technique. It was Livermore's way of defeating the single enemy that has destroyed more traders than any chart pattern, any indicator, any economic crisis. Impatience. Impatience to enter. Impatience to add. Impatience to take profit. Impatience to wait for the trend to express its full life cycle. But the moment you respect the cycle, the moment you stop forcing trades to confirm your ego, and instead let the market confirm the trade, everything changes. You enter with clarity. You add with conviction. You sit tight with peace. You exit with precision. You finally trade like Livermore, not emotionally, not reactively, but rhythmically, in harmony with the pulse of the market. Music softens, a final reflective chord. Before we close, let me speak directly to you, trader to trader. If you don't know which phase your trade is in, you're not trading, you're gambling. If you want to evolve, if you want to grow, if you want to reach the next level as a speculator, start by answering one simple question. Where in the trade cycle do you get confused? Entry, confirmation, adding, holding, or exiting? Comment below with one word, just one, and let that one word become the beginning of your transformation.